Welcome to Like Mother, Like Murder. I am Rachel.
And I'm Heather.
We bring you the good,
The badass,
and the crime.
This is Like Mother, Like Murder.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Like Mother, Like Murder, your favorite true crime momcast. I am Rachel.
And I am Heather, and we bring you mom-related crime content weekly, from missing moms to murdered moms, moms who murder, survivors, and much, much more.
Yes. We are so thankful you guys are here to listen to a very important case today. And for that case, we have a very special guest joining us. She's a badass mom of two. She's wifed up, animal-loving, outdoorsy, antique queen.
And if all of that is not amazing enough, she is also the creator, producer, and voice behind the chart-topping Missing in Hushtown, one half of the amazing, thriving, growing Fire Eyes Media LLC, and so much, much more. But the best thing of all is we get to call her our friend. Jules, thank you for being here today. We are so happy to have you on.
Hello, my darlings. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi, everybody. I also just need to shout out Momcast Productions because I don't know if they've announced it or not yet, but they're also producing season 2 of Missing in Hushtown about Bethany Markowski's 2001 disappearance. And so I'm super honored to be here to bring season 1 to you guys in a snapshot. What do we call that?
Just a quick overview.
Overview
a
today.
Recap.
A recap. And behind the scenes, me and the girls are working a lot and very hard to bring you season 2. So this is exciting.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And actually, that might be the announcement. I don't know. I mean, I know that we've talked about it, but I don't know if there's been an actual announcement of it.
Surprise.
I don't know. Yeah. Woohoo. Perfect.
It's fine. So today, you guys, we're going to be talking about Jennifer and Adrianna Wix, which is a missing persons case that is near and dear to Jules's heart, to all of ours. Before we get into it, can you tell us first, how you came about this case and why it means so much to you?
Absolutely. So when I first was told about this case, it was when I was doing my weekly true crime podcast, True Crime and Headlines, and I went into a local women's group in our community on Facebook, and I asked, does anybody have any case suggestions? Because at being a new true crime podcast, I was wondering, how will I find any cases? Which now is funny because there's too many cases. How can I cover them all? But I immediately got a bunch of responses asking me to cover Jennifer and Adrianna Wix's disappearance because she and her daughter, Jennifer and her daughter, Adrianna, disappeared from our own town. And I started to think about it, and at first I felt a little afraid because that would be digging into people that live in my backyard, very, very close. It's a very small historic community here in Middle Tennessee called Cross Plains. And it just turned out that there were too many coincidences that I didn't feel were coincidences. You know, my sister's name is also Jennifer, and my sister is the same age as Jennifer would be. They're just 3 weeks apart. And at the time, my youngest son was 2 years, and that is how old Adrianna was when she disappeared. And you can't see me right now, but when I say disappeared, I have a snarky look on my face because we will go into it. They did not disappear. Yep. They did not. They were taken and disposed of. Yeah. And it's absolutely sick. So I reached out to Jennifer Wix's cousin because our sons were in preschool together, coincidentally. And she got me in touch with Casey Robinson, formerly Casey Wix, one of Jennifer's sisters, and we decided to work together on the long-form podcast because it was too much of a story and too in-depth to just cover it on True Crime and Headlines. As soon as I learned about this case more and more and talked with the family, I knew, okay, I've never done a long-form investigative podcast. I've been a podcaster for a few months. Why not do a full-length investigative podcast? So I Google how to do a full-length. And it was very much learning on the spot as we go. A lot of grace was given to me by everybody I was working with, learning how to edit and do things as I went. And I've learned so much, but the biggest takeaway that I have learned is these people behind these families who are fighting for justice are my heroes. And Casey Robinson and her mother Kathy and all the other family members, they are my heroes. And I invited Casey to come on and co-produce the podcast with me to give her much more of a voice and ownership of her story as well. And then here we find ourselves after the first season. It was released in August 2024 on Jennifer Wix's birthday, August 16th. And a few months into it, and we're still pushing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Rachel and I are not only honored to call you our friend and work with you and Jen in season 2, but you are an inspiration for advocacy for the family members and for people like Jennifer and Adrianna who deserve to have their story shouted from the rooftops, which is what you and Casey have done, and get their names out there. And that's, so important. And we are inspired every day by that, I think, Jules. So thank you so much. And, I've got a little bit of goosebumps. You guys have heard it. It's Missing in Hushtown season 1. I think it's safe to say, Jules, this forwards and backwards and every which way. So I think now is the time. Rachel and I are just going to sit back, give you the floor to share the recap or overview on the disappearance of the Wix girls and everything that goes along with that.
All right. And I know you girls know this story, and you guys are Wix warriors, and Rachel, she's not there's 3-hour drive down, and she did that 3-hour drive one way for the podcast release launch party, and she got to meet the Wix family. And then she turned around after it and she drove 3 hours back, and I will never forget that.
I will never forget it. And meeting them, the way that you talk about them, and then actually things become so much more real when you are around them and in their presence. And you can only do so much from afar. You can only feel so much in your heart when you listen or when you research or when you do something. Once you're there and you give a hug to the mom who is missing her daughter or the sister who is fighting, it's a whole different world. And so I'm so glad that I was able to go out there.
It is. And we'll be repeating some of these things with the Markowski case when you come back out here, and
very
for
soon.
Tennessee Missing Children's Day too. So
Yes.
I'm so grateful that we can be close enough geographically that we can do this. Okay, like my girls said, this is going to be kind of a Cliff Note version. The entire podcast, the entire season is available for you wherever you get your podcasts. Just search Missing in Hushtown, and you can go ahead and binge the entire season. At the end of the season, we do have a bonus episode, a live Q&A that was monitored by my co-partner, Jen Rivera, and co-producer, Casey Robinson. We answered questions about that, and I'll give a little brief update at the end of this too. So if you haven't listened, after you hear this, don't worry, you won't hear everything. There's a lot of information that you'll want to hear that we're not going to give you in just this, but it's important that everyone knows the story. And it's important because of this, because it could be your daughter, your sister, your niece, your granddaughter. And this is absolutely, I believe in my full heart, a case of domestic violence. Intimate partner crimes, and it is a solvable case. It should have been solved 20 years ago. This coming March, we're coming up on March 25th, 21 years since the girls were last seen or heard from. So I'll start off by saying that the case is designated by Robertson County law enforcement as an unsolved homicide. So the first 10 years of the case, it was a disappearance, and then it was reclassified as an unsolved homicide. And we have some information throughout this that will blow your mind, and hopefully you get upset and join us. So let's go. So our victims here, their legacy is more than just the fact that they went missing. It's the fact that they're missed. And they're missed for all of who they are and who they were. And saying their names in the present tense is what family has to continue to do because the girls have never been found. So Jennifer Wix was only 21. And she was a really young mother. Adrianna was only 2. And Jennifer was a mother who wanted to be a good mother and loved her daughter. And Jennifer's family loved Adrianna. And Adrianna was a spirited, beautiful, kind, adorable girl who looked like Boo from Monsters, Inc. Bright blue eyes, yes. Dark hair, super adorable. And Jennifer Wix had darker skin complexion. She was part Native Indian, and she had really dark, beautiful brown eyes, really dark hair. She was taller as well. I know the other girls in her family, because she's one of 6 girls, they are a lot shorter. But they share two different sides. So Jennifer Wix's mom, Kathy, who I'm very close with as well, had Jennifer and then Heather and then the baby Casey. And then Jennifer's dad, sorry, this might be confusing. So she had Jennifer, and then Jennifer's dad went and was in another relationship and had 3 more daughters. And Kathy was in a relationship with someone else and had 2 daughters with him. And that's where Heather and Casey on this side. Now, I'll talk about Casey a lot because she's the one that's heading up. She took over all of this, and so she's also the co-producer. So Casey she's my sister now. In looking for her sister, looking for answers, we've become family, and it's not something I hold lightly. I take it very seriously. It's a lot of pressure not to screw it up because these people, it's their life. So they were in the small historic town in Middle Tennessee. It's about 45 minutes north of Nashville called Cross Plains, and it was established in the 1700s. And it's a very small, we've got one blinky light in the town, and it is Robertson County. And that's where they pretty much lived. And after Jennifer had Adrianna, Jennifer's mom moved to Las Vegas for a job offer, for better opportunities to be able to provide for her family more. So Casey and Kathy moved to Las Vegas. Jennifer, she's an adult. She decides to stay in Tennessee with Adrianna. You know, she's 20, 21. And her other sister, Heather, just a few years younger, also stays in Tennessee. But Casey was still a minor in the baby, so she had to go with her mom. And Jennifer and Adrianna went between Jennifer's grandmother and grandfather's house and her Aunt Lisa's house, where she would stay. She would take turns, little babies, quite a lot on an elderly couple, but they absolutely loved Adrianna. Her grandparents spoke so highly of her, and her granddaddy is actually still alive. And you may have met him at the launch party. He was actually there in the launch party sitting down in the corner.
Yeah. I don't remember. So I remember saying hi, but I don't think I got to actually sit down and talk with him.
Yeah, I didn't either. And it's overwhelming. You
were busy.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for helping me with my children, by the way.
You were busy. I got them waters. They're fine.
It was very chaotic, but in a good way, because so many people turned out to support the girls. But he would swing. So Granddaddy Wix would swing on the front porch and sing with Adrianna at night. And they had the most special, beautiful relationship. And once they disappeared, he was never the same. Again, it destroyed him. I know that Jennifer's sister, Megan Wix, such a sweet, beautiful soul, she shared with me how her granddaddy completely shifted a 180 on the type of man that he was. Because he was literally brokenhearted, and it took forever for him to take the porch swing down, and it's just devastating. So it trickled out through everybody. Now, before the girls went missing, the families were really close. They always had a ton of get-togethers, the aunts, the uncles, all the cousins. They're a really tight-knit community. After the girls went missing, March 25th, 2004, the family has separated. There's a lot of contention. There's a lot of I believe, misunderstanding. There's a lot of grief, unresolved grief, and lack of communication, or just not even knowing where to start. You don't have a manual on what to do when someone you love is taken from you.
Yeah.
So while Jennifer's mom, Kathy, and Casey are in Las Vegas, Kathy gets a call from Jennifer, and Jennifer tells her, "Mom, I'm scared. The boy she was dating, Joey Benton, had told his mother, Cindy Benton, take Jennifer and Adrianna away from our house because I fear I'm going to hurt them and hurt myself." And Joey and Jennifer had been dating just a little bit. It was kind of like a hot and heavy kind of relationship, though. And from all accounts, he really loved Jennifer and he loved Adrianna in his way. But he was living at home with his mom, Cindy and Joseph Frank Benton, and his sister, Amy Benton, at the time was older and not living at home. But yeah, he was living at home. So when Jennifer was with him, they were at the house. And so what does his mom do? She takes Jennifer and the baby and brings her to her family's home. But when Kathy hears this, she says, no. I need to go home. There's something not right. And so Kathy moves back to Tennessee very quickly. And they moved back into Kathy's mom. She had a home that was available for rent. So they all moved into that home. And at this point, Jennifer and Joey were supposed to be broken up. And we're going into December of 2003, and they were supposed to be broken up. She wasn't supposed to be talking to him because it was so contentious, and it was scary for them. And lo and behold, Jennifer kept going back and was talking to Joey behind her parents' back. And her younger sister, Heather, heard her sister talk to Joey over the phone. Their walls were thin and she could hear her. She goes to tell her mother, and they get in a fight. Her mom says, "You're not going with this guy. You're staying here. We're here for you. Your daughter's here. You're staying with us. It's not healthy. Please don't do this." Well, Joey shows up at the house, and they all start screaming and yelling and fighting. And Kathy begged him, "Please don't take my daughter." And he looked at her in the eye and he said, "You don't have a daughter anymore, bitch."
Oh my God. That just...
And he goes back out to the car. Casey grabs Adrianna, goes to the back room of the house and locks the door. They're all afraid. Jennifer and her mom are fighting. Kathy doesn't want her to leave, so she blocks the door. Jennifer and her escalate, and Jennifer pushes Kathy out of the way to escape the house. Well, Kathy falls back onto a coffee table, and Heather, Jennifer's middle sister from her mom's side, sees that her mom was pushed and something switches in her. Now, Heather's tiny. She's a tiny, petite girl. She'd never been in a fist fight in her life, but as soon as she saw her mom get thrown over something that they're trying to do to protect Jennifer, Heather said she just snapped and went after her sister. "You don't hit mom. You don't treat her that way. You can't leave." And it was very traumatic. And Kathy's yelling at Casey in the back room, "Call 911. So Casey is 15 actually, I think at this time, 15. And she's in a locked room holding her niece, who's almost 2 at the time here. And she's calling 911. And Jennifer and Joey leave. And Adrianna stays there. And it turns out that when they leave, they go to the police station. Joey's father, Joseph Benton, drives her to the police station to file a report against her own family. And the Wix family also files a report against Joey because Joey had knocked down their door to get back into the house to get to Jennifer. And it was that terrifying. So after this, the family is very split. So Jennifer doesn't want to, communicate with them right now. Joey and Joey's mother, Cindy, came to the house later that day, though, to get Adrianna. And the cops said they had to give Adrianna to them. And it's a very devastating and pivotal moment of foreshadowing, and it's heartbreaking. short of kidnapping, you can't do. I mean, there are the laws there. Short of, what do you do? And
Right.
so they thought, okay, we need to stay in communication. We need to stay in contact. We love her. We love them both dearly. Over time, Jennifer started communicating more, and Kathy was able to get back in touch with her daughter. And they're having phone calls, and they're meeting up for play dates at McDonald's, where Heather was working at the time. And they'd go to the place, and Joey would actually be there each time because Jennifer didn't have a car. Jennifer didn't have a job. Jennifer was living at Joey's house. She didn't have a cell phone. I know cell phones were fairly a new thing, those old Nokias, but they were still something people were having. She didn't have anything of her own except Adrianna. And so she was reliant upon Joey for everything. And Kathy recalls seeing Joey interact with Adrianna and thinking, okay, maybe it's not that bad. He sure looks like he loves my daughter and her daughter. And those times at McDonald's are really dear to the family because the girls hold on to those last few moments in person, you know, really, really strongly. Now, February, actually this week, 21 years ago, Kathy and Casey had a birthday. They share a birthday, February 23rd. And Jennifer came, and she got dropped off by Joey. Her and the baby got dropped off, and he had to stay down the road because he wasn't allowed at their house, at the Wix's house. He wasn't welcome, obviously. And it meant a lot to Casey. It's one of the last times she got to be around her sister, and they all got to be together, but things seemed a lot better then. And then we move into March. So March of 2004 is the last month of any documented communication with Jennifer or Adrianna Wix. Now, in March, so when Jennifer moved out, and I apologize for jumping around a bit. Hopefully it's going okay.
No, yeah, definitely following. Okay. We're staying quiet because you have, you have all of this in your head, and I don't want to say anything that's going to throw you off track. So
I printed all these notes, and I haven't looked at them once. I'm like, once I start going.
Yeah, that's what I was like. You know what you're talking about. You know all of those details and information. So
thank you for your faith in me. So Jennifer and Joey moved into this building on Joey's parents' property, and it's technically a barn shed kind of storage place that was wired for electricity. It was nothing special, and it was called the party barn, pretty much, where kids would drink. I say kids, but when they were children, they would probably, minors, high schoolers go and drink and do drugs. So it was the known party barn. And that's where Jennifer and Joey moved in. Now, recall, Jennifer is 21 and Joey's a few years older than her. And they're living in this barn shed with a toddler. And that starts in December where, it starts to get cold. Middle Tennessee is a little unpredictable, but it gets pretty chilly, pretty freezing, actually. And we can get ice storms, and it's not great conditions. And Jennifer decides this is not a condition for a toddler to live in. It's too cold. So they move into Joey's family home. Now, this is where things become very contentious. Joey's mother, Cindy Benton, allegedly did not like Jennifer Wix. There would be arguments and fights. She didn't like that Joey was treating Adrianna like it was his daughter. Adrianna had her own bedroom, which was right next to the bedroom that Joey and Jennifer shared. And something interesting I will share during my investigative process of this podcast, I interviewed somebody who was friends with Joey's sister, Amy, when they were children. And she does share in an interview with me that's actually recorded on the podcast. You can listen to how she thought it was so odd when she went to their house to sleep over because the doors would lock from the outside. And when she went to sleep over at this house, her and Amy would be put into Amy's bedroom and the door would be locked from the outside, and they had to knock if they wanted to come out and get escorted to the bathroom. When they got fed, the mother, Cindy, put the food into the room and then relocked the door. And when asked why they were doing that, I don't know what degree of truth this is, but they just want to stay out of daddy's way, pretty much. Because Joseph...
Well, maybe if Cindy ever does a interview, she could speak on it.
I would love that. She, I will give a little spoiler. She has filed for divorce.
Mm-hmm.
I will get into that in a minute, and it's crazy. So they're in the house. You know, Cindy's contentious. One night she throws Jennifer and Adrianna Wix's dinner out the back door because they're in a fight, and she says, "You can go outside and eat your dinner like dogs." So that just paints a picture of that contention. Right,
and it wasn't
there.
new, right? Because when you were talking about her earlier in their relationship, right from the start, she already had these ill feelings towards her, and so
she didn't
this
like her.
it only escalated.
And I don't understand. I don't know anything, to be fair, in the situation. I don't know much about Cindy except bits and pieces we know about her history and her past. There's a lot of shady stuff that we didn't share in the podcast. A lot of stuff that would absolutely bring things more to light, but it's always that fine line with what do I share in relation to the story, character defamation. She's never been charged with anything or been named a person of interest, and you just have to walk a fine line. So there's a lot of information and documents and court transcripts that I did not put into the podcast for that reason, as to not take a lot away. But in the future, when we revisit the season, we might have to do a lot more because things are moving and grooving here in Robertson County, and it's not looking good for the Bentons. Thank God. So, and I'll get into that. We are going to fast forward to March 22nd, 2004. So just a few weeks. So Joey and Jennifer are trying to sleep train Adrianna a little bit, and it's not going well. Adriana's really upset and crying, and she won't stop crying, and she calls her mom Kathy, and she says, Adrianna won't stop crying, everyone's fighting, I don't know what to do. And her mom says, well, where's the baby? And she says she's in her room. Joey's trying to console her. Mr. Benton is even yelling at me, and normally he's nice to me. He got in my face. So things are really hitting this boiling point right here. And Kathy says, okay, go get the baby. Put her in the room with you. It's not a good night to sleep train, and close the door. So she did that. So Kathy's aware now. And she says, you know, maybe I can come get you. And she says, no, we'll be fine. I'm an adult. I can handle this. Plus, you're not allowed on the Benton property. So a few days later, Adrianna won't stop crying. She just will not stop crying. She's in pain. And she calls Kathy, and Kathy says, take her to the hospital. And Jennifer says, nobody here will drive me. They won't drive you? Cindy says, we don't need to go. Cindy Benton was a registered nurse.
Goodness.
And she said, oh, she doesn't need to go. And Adrianna was having a hard time going pee, and she was saying she hurt as best as she could, you know, being a 2-year-old. Mm-hmm. And she said, no, Mom, you can't come here. They won't let you on the property. And so she said, hang up and call your Aunt Lisa. And so Aunt Lisa comes and takes her to North Crest Hospital here in Robertson County. And it's then they find out that she has a diagnosis. Adrianna has a diagnosis of bacterial vaginitis. Now, bacterial vaginitis can be caused by a few things. A common causation for it for young kids is being in a diaper, wet diaper, for way too long. Mm-hmm. Or it could be irritation from soaps like bath bombs and things. Another cause could also be sexual abuse. And whatever the reason, we'll never know because we never got to finish the follow-up because the girls would end up disappearing just 3 days later. So when they go back to the house, then they have a follow-up the next day at the pediatrician. Her grandmother, Granny Wix, takes her to the pediatrician. And when they get done, Joey comes and takes her, and they meet Kathy at a local Dollar General because Kathy made some homemade salve with natural ingredients to help soothe the irritation area for little Adrianna. And they exchanged that. and Joey was with them. And they exchanged that in the parking lot. She got to hug him. And this part is heartbreaking because Adrianna tells Kathy, I want to go with you, Mimi. And she's giving her a big hug. And Kathy says, honey, I have to go back to work. I will see you, though, really soon, I promise. And that's the last time she saw Adrianna. And that's the last, I just got goosebumps too.
Yeah, my whole body did too.
And this is a really, it's a really hard memory that plays on repeat for Kathy too. Because what would have happened? I mean, she didn't know. It wasn't her fault. She didn't know. They were doing everything she could. And they said goodbye and drove away. And March 25th comes around, and Jennifer's talking with her dad on the phone, and he relays he hears a female voice in the background. The only other female that lives in the home is Cindy Benton. Jennifer turns away from the phone and yells, "What? I'm talking to my dad." And we don't know who she was talking to, but just that report alone tells us she wasn't alone at her house. And that is important because later on the Bentons will claim Jennifer was alone at the house that day. Right. There's nobody at the house with
not
her.
Only not alone, but it also shows that she was in some sort of defensive or agitated state, right? Because if someone else was approaching and it wasn't something negative, you say, I'm on the phone, I'll be with you in a second, or just a moment, I'm on the phone. The way that you say something means that there was a lot more going on than just a...
No, you're right. And that's such a great point to bring up because we know the contentious relationship between the family. But also, you guys, her daughter just got diagnosed with bacterial vaginitis, and she's only 2. So whether or not it was from sexual abuse, it matters more to this story what Jennifer believed it was from also. Right. And we don't know if maybe on the car ride home, Jennifer and her mother were talking, Jennifer and her Aunt Lisa were talking about what could have caused it. And things started clicking. Or Jennifer and her Granny Wix the next day from the pediatrician, or Jennifer and Joey started talking about it. Well, Jennifer tells her dad, Joey's coming home from work early. We're going to have a picnic. Or we're going to talk about things. And gets off the phone. And she later talks to her aunt also, which was not known at first that she also called her aunt as well. But her aunt was at work and she couldn't do anything. She couldn't really talk to her. So she had to get off the phone. And then after that, all communication stops. Like, we don't hear anything from Jennifer Wix or Adrianna Wix ever again. Now, what we have is a he said, and then who knows version.
Right.
So let me take you Cliff Notes real quick for the sake of time here. Joey Benton claims this. He gets a phone call at work. He was working Cross Plains is just below the Tennessee, it's right below the Tennessee-Kentucky border. 20 minutes north of us, 15 minutes north, you're in Kentucky. And so he was working on a construction job in what's called Franklin, Kentucky. It's right by us. And he gets a call at work to his job site, and it's somebody that said he has to come home for a family emergency. Now, the Bentons claim that Joseph Benton, the father, and Cindy Benton, the mother of Joey and Amy Benton, were not home. They were at work or other engagements. So nobody was supposed to be home that day. So where does this phone call come from? Who dials this call? We're not sure. But other stories, other claims relay that they do know that he got a call to come home from work. So he comes home from work. And according to Joey, they go and have their picnic, and they go and fight, and they get in a car and drive around. And while they're driving around talking, they fight and they break up. And Adrianna's with them, and Jennifer and Joey are in the car. And he drives her a few miles from their home to this food place, not restaurant, but it used to be called Food Value. It's now the Piggly Wiggly in Cross Plains. And he drives her there. Now, according to Joey, she gets out and makes a phone call at the payphone. She gets back in the car, and he takes the girls a few miles more down the road. There used to be an Exxon gas station just before exit 112, which is our exit here off the 65 North here in Tennessee. And it's no longer there, but he claims he dropped her off. Adrianna and her get out of the car. A white car pulls up. Now, after he drops the girls off, he goes and parks across the street at a local church and watches them from that parking lot, he said. And he watches the girls both get into a white 4-door Mustang. Now, the 4-door Mustang part may or may not pop out as odd for you. If you don't know cars, there are no 4-door Mustangs, and this was in 2004. And this is coming from an individual's report who also owns Ford cars and a Mustang. So it was very interesting at the time that he labeled it a 4-door Mustang or Camaro, which also there's no 4-door Camaro. Yeah. And he sees them drive away. And then he goes home, and he says the next day, he goes to work, comes home early, and Jennifer comes by his house in that same white car. Again, second time he's seen it within like a 12-hour stretch.
And he's still a 4-door?
He doesn't know what it is.
Yeah.
You know what they say when you lie.
Yeah.
And she gets out and says, hey, I need my tax refund check, because she had given it to his parents to deposit for her. She didn't have her bank account, and they were just going to cash it for her. I believe it was $500. And he says, well, my dad isn't here, so I don't have it for you. She says, okay, fine, I'll come back, the next day, the Saturday. And she doesn't come back. She leaves, and he never sees her again. So his claim is that she was alive, and the last time he saw her, and then she was gone. But it's interesting because later, Joey ends up dropping off trash bags full of Jennifer and Adrianna's belongings. And in this trash bag, is Adrianna's stuffed Elmo. She called Melmo. She never would sleep without it. And Adrianna's purple jacket. Now, this is March. It was, it's still fairly chilly. And that was the only jacket that she had of that weight, which would be appropriate in that weather that she always wore. So she was gone without that. And then March 27th is when the family is able to file a missing persons report. So just 2 days later, the police go out. I won't go into big detail on this. Go into detail. I actually interview the first responding officer, and you can hear his interview on the podcast. But there is something suspicious, and I will give you a little bit of information, is that in a roundabout way, the cop is able to find out that the Bentons only have one car seat. Joey did not like having to take the car seat out and in and out and in every time they switch cars. And not only that, the officer saw the car seat in the house when he went to the home. Now, he wasn't allowed to do a search of the residence. He was enabled to do a walkthrough per the family's allowance, but he couldn't go into any rooms, and he couldn't go, the shed in the back was locked. And so now we have this missing girl and the missing daughter, and the family's claiming that she was alive and they had nothing to do with it. She probably ran away, and now the community is running amok on online forums. And there was this forum back then on Facebook called Topics, Topix, in the community. And I have the archives of that, and you can see the families just spewing back and forth all these allegations about each other. And it's really devastating and heartbreaking, but it's also very telling because Joey's father is spewing such venom and hatred. And I'm going to fast forward real quick because the girls, there have been 0 arrests made, 0 publicly named suspects in this case ever. ever to this day. Okay. So in an eerie twist of fate on March 27th, 2024. So this was 11 months ago.
March 27th, 2024. That many years on the same date that the report was missing back in 2004.
Yeah, almost to the hour.
That's
almost to the, because
crazy.
I know that they filed, the report was filed at like 6 p.m. on March 27th.
Yeah.
And Casey had a post scheduled. Casey runs up the social media Justice for Jennifer and Adrianna Wix on Facebook.
Yes.
And you can probably link that for us in your
Yes,
show notes.
absolutely.
Okay, if they want to go to that. But if you ever want to talk to Casey directly, she's the one who answers everything. And she will read everything. We follow up on every single lead, no matter how asinine it might seem. You never know. Well, okay, in the time, there's a lot of searches for the girls by the family, not by law enforcement. I will skip over that part, though. I will say that it is an important part, but I will say that there has never been a sanctioned police search on the property for Jennifer and Adrianna Wix. It's only been sanctioned by the family. They've allowed it. You can search here, you can't search there. Which then you're like, well, what's the big, why?
Right.
So if you want to learn more about that and the odd corruption, and the family had a search lined up, and Gene Bollinger, who was the sheriff at the time in Robertson County, had them call it off last minute. And that's one of the reasons that we are called Hush Town in the podcast, is people weren't talking about this publicly. It was such a hush-hush topic for a long time, and we've totally switched that narrative through our efforts in making them come together. Like, say, hey, no more secrets. These girls deserved better. You deserve just the same as they do if you go missing as well. So we find out that there is a search warrant being executed on the Benton home property. Now, they still live in the same house that Jennifer and Adrianna Wix were living in when they went missing. Joey Benton still lives at home. So March 27th, 2024, eerily 20 years almost to the minute that the Wix family filed a missing persons report for Jennifer and Adrianna. And I get a phone call from Casey, and we have learned the community is buzzing because there are police cars, unmarked federal cars, TBI cars, the bomb squad, and ATF are all at the Benton property. Now, they live at the same house as they did in 2004. And Joey still lives at home with his parents to this day. And it's interesting because that day, Joseph Frank Benton was not at his home when this search was executed. He was in Robertson County Jail, and I'll go into why. So we're there. I get in my car and I said, hey, Casey, you need me to go? I'll go and I'll watch and I'll, figure out and try to learn as much as I can, because they were not living that close by anymore. And I live very, very close. So I was there within 6 minutes. And I show up and I end up being there for 9 hours. Okay. And as it turns out, they did bring all that stuff out to the property, and they were searching for something. And we did not know at the time for the first few hours whether or not they were actually searching for Jennifer and Adrianna's remains. We were so hopeful because finally it's too coincidental. This has got to be a sign.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, while we're there, the TBI calls Casey, and they tell her, we are executing a search warrant on the Benton property, and it's not for Jennifer and Adrianna. We were crushed. I mean, when we were there, it ended up being bomb-making materials on the property. We had to move back a few blocks towards the end of the evening because they were trying to clear it, and they wanted to make sure the area was clear, and it was terrifying. But the one thing that it helped was boost this story in the media, because people started talking about it more and more and more. And it was just coincidental that we had already started. We were really long into our podcast at the time. This was about a year and a half. I was working with the family behind the scenes to do the podcast. And so it was like we were already a year pretty much into it. So the reason that they were out there on that property is because Joseph Frank Benton allegedly assaulted Cindy Benton, which is a violation of his probation.
It should be a violation of anyone's anything, I want to add, but yeah.
Exactly. And when he is in jail and during his deposition, it also comes about, about firearms and things you're not allowed to have in your situation like that. And while he is gone, the family also turns over a device where they had seen images that were very disturbing on Joseph Frank Benton's device. And so they were then searching the property for inappropriate, illegal, immoral, what do you want to call it? Disgusting monster shit.
Yep. That's it.
And it turns out, and it comes out in the news, that there was an image of a minor, an inappropriate image of a minor in his possession. And it was a picture of a minor from 20 years ago. Those exact words were used 20 years ago on the 20-year anniversary. So, everybody's thinking, oh my gosh, let's think about the bacterial vaginitis. That makes sense now. And is there a photo? Is it Adrianna? Is there like a child sex trafficking ring, which was a rumor for a long time as well? And turns out it was not Adrianna. But there were a lot of images, and very disturbing images, very disturbing thing to know, all this information. He's not a good man, not a good man. And it was somebody else, though. It was still somebody, and we do know who that somebody is, but we won't reveal it because we consider them a victim as well, and it's devastating. So he has been in jail. Now, if you don't know, with search warrants, you can't go and search for Jennifer and Adriana's remains while you're searching for firearms, bomb-making material, exploitation of minors. You can't search for any of that purposely. If you find it, you have to prove that you found it when you weren't searching for that. Otherwise, you can't use it. And so they were not able to do like ground penetrating radar and stuff, but they did find, a ton of bomb-making materials all over their property too. There's like 5 acres immediately right there at that house. So he's been sitting in jail, and we've been advocating and showing up to all these court dates. I've gone to quite a few of his court dates, and he doesn't look well. He's very ill and sick, and he looks like his health is declining rapidly, which worries me that there will be no conviction before he's dead. But I do believe that all 3 people living at that house, Cindy, Joe, and Joseph Benton, know exactly what happened to Jennifer and Adrianna Wix. He's getting out of jail in a few weeks because all of the weapons on his property were not registered to him. And Cindy Benton has since filed for divorce from him. And an order of protection has been granted. I got the documents this week, and so he can't go back to that property.
So she gets the property, and he has to go elsewhere.
For now, yeah.
For now, okay.
For now, I don't know what will happen
when the divorce settlement happens. Yeah,
and it's very eye-opening to our system because I'll tell you what, Joey started talking to Casey this year, texting her back and forth. And one day she said, will you finally just tell me what happened? And so they talk on the phone, and he tells her, I dropped her off at that gas station. And the next day she came by looking for her check, and I've never seen her since. She was alive when I saw her. Well, fast forward a few more months, and he's singing a different tune. He's now saying, when I got home that day from work, so he's still saying he got called home from work. When I got home from work that day, now, I am going to pause there because I want you to hear the full story before we do that. And I'm not trying on purpose to give you this cliffhanger. It's important for you to know and to hear the whole story out of respect for the girls. And it is the last episode called And Now We Know. If you want to just even skip to that one, And Now We Know.
Listen to the whole thing. I'm telling you because there are so many details that really just make you go click. Like you were saying, this makes sense now. Click, this makes sense now. And there's to get the whole context of everything and to really understand the case. Definitely, I mean, maybe listen to it first and then go back, but definitely you need to listen to the whole thing.
The numbers on the podcast downloads show that a lot of people do that.
Yes.
Start with chapter.
Start at the
Now we
last
know.
one. Yeah.
But this is still an active event going on. We are still every week working on this case behind the scenes. We actually started recording for this season 2 during season 1 because of all the moving pieces. I will say that I did personally go to a residence, and it was in the summer, about 100 something degrees, and I was in a crawl space under a home with Adrianna's father, Billy, who is a brother to me. He's amazing. And we were digging to try to find his daughter in the crawl space of a house in 100-degree heat. It's a whole traumatizing journey. I've been through cornfields with the family searching for possible graves for the girls. It's become like a big piece of who I am, and it really makes you stop and think when you hear these true crime cases where you hear them for 40 minutes, 30 minutes. These people continue on their entire lives. It's their entire
Every
lives.
day, 24/7.
And now Casey and Kathy are working hard to change legislation about missing people in Tennessee. And they just had a meeting at the Capitol here in Tennessee with a representative, and it went really well, and they're fighting. They are fighting. 2025 is a year that they fight to change, that nobody has to go through what they've gone through again. Because I will say, we were given coordinates of where the girls' remains were. The girls are still not found.
Yeah.
Still not found. And nobody's been arrested. We were so hoping that with Joe in jail, the father Joe in jail, that this would be it. They could somehow leverage this, but it did not work out that way. It did not work out that way.
But the story's not over. I mean,
No.
it's far from over. And the fact that there are people like you, like Casey, like everybody else in the family that continue to wake up every day and fight for Jennifer and Adrianna. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah. The heaviness. Yeah. Rachel, did you meet Billy at Adrianna's dad? He's so sweet, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. So he actually came to me. He came to me and introduced himself and was like, I know you. And he was like, and I was like, can I hug you immediately? He is the sweetest
He's
guy.
so sweet. And Adrianna looks just like him.
Yes.
It's
eyes.
interesting. You know, Adrianna has siblings too. And you'll hear in the episode, Dad Never Gives Up, in the podcast, you get to hear Billy's story. And people always say, well, was Joey her father? No. It was Billy, but Billy did not know that he was Adrianna's father. They didn't get the DNA results until after she had been taken from him, and it is devastating, and he has not stopped fighting, and he's the most amazing dad, and so it breaks all our hearts that he will never get to be that amazing dad to Adrianna while she is here and living with us. But the whole story is explained. For the very first time he came forward, he had never interviewed or told anyone about it. In fact, nobody had even shared who Adrianna's father was. And, you know, he didn't know that he had a daughter out there. And once he found out, he was there, stepped up. His whole family is amazing. Her siblings are amazing. It's a whole family deal. And now it's a community deal. And we're all coming together to try to find these girls.
Community and beyond, because the Wix Warriors are not just in that community. They are everywhere. They are everywhere.
True. That is so true. So I thank you girls for giving me this platform to share this story. I live it all the time, but it's like having to tell it like this, I forget how ingrained it is.
Yeah.
And I know as soon as we get off, I'm going to cry because it's so heavy.
Yeah.
And it's
Absolutely.
important. And I
You
never
don't have to wait until we get off. Rachel and I cry on our podcast all the time.
I never set out to solve this case. And that's one thing with, even as we work as co-producers for season 2, Bethany Markowski, she's been missing since March 4, 2001. We're not trying to solve her case. We're trying to get as loud as we can and to ask big questions and chase all these leads and to get enough people on board to say, hey, this could be solved. Why aren't we doing more?
Right.
Yes.
And I think we're meeting that goal here, but it's just, it's the beginning. There will be another Wix season. This year's huge, and we're doing a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff, too. And there's a lot that's probably going to be in national news, we hope, soon about this case.
Yeah. You have done so much, and talking, and that this has been a portion of your life recently. They've lived this for all of these years, and it's like our hope and our prayers are that sooner than later, there's answers, they're found, because they also deserve that peace, that ability to finally rest after fighting the way that they have fought.
They have
It's
no place to
heartbreaking.
visit their girls. There's no place to go
Right.
to visit them. And that's one of the reasons in Springfield, Tennessee, which is Robertson County, Hushtown, which we love. We're proud to live here. And that's why we fight so hard, because we're proud to be here. And we should fight hard for our own girls. Casey fought really hard to get a mural painted in Hushtown. And it's a mommy horse and a baby horse to represent Jennifer and Adrianna. So if you're ever in town, take a picture of that and go ahead and tag us, because we would love to see you in front of that mural. And Jennifer was such a woman who loved animals and loved horses. And if she was here today, she'd probably, have a horse rescue sanctuary. And that was one of her goals. And it breaks my heart to see all these dreams, just ripped away. But we're trying to honor her and to help others that are lost in this position too, through our efforts.
That mural, I'll add. So I'll start by posting mine and tagging mine, and you guys can follow suit, because I have my picture. And one other thing about when I did go out there for that podcast launch and everything is the community itself. It's small, it's tiny, and the amount of, we're not going to cry, the amount of signs that you see in yards with Jennifer and Adriana's faces, right? There's signs as you just skip it's small, but each other house and through the streets, you see these signs. And it's such a beautiful thing that this community has come together and said, guess what? We're not going to be silent. We're not going to be quiet anymore. It's not a hush town. We're going to speak up. And that's exactly what you've done.
Thankful for that. We had a few billboards, which was great at the time too. And one of the things too is we had a Christmas vigil for the girls this year, because the 20 years. We had it at a barn just a mile from where she went missing from the Benton home. And we got one of the billboards. It was a static billboard, so it's like a big old tarp. They took it down. Lamar Advertising gave it to us, and so it's on the side of this person's barn.
Oh, I love that.
So the Bentons, when they drive by, they have to see it. There's also a big sign at the end of the Bentons Road that's been there for 20 years, and then Casey and I went and put up one of those lawn signs in their front yard.
Good.
And then we drove away real fast. It's not there anymore, but it felt good at the time.
Yep.
But we also say we don't want any vigilantes. We want this to be done by the law. We don't anyone
Right.
to hunt them down. And I even reached out to Joey and I said, we haven't heard your side. Come,
Right.
tell me your side. I will play everything. You can even have a copy of everything to make sure I don't try to bamboozle
turn it.
you
Yeah,
or twist
yeah.
it. And I never heard back from him. And I know he got my messages. So I tried to still be objective in the beginning, but it's impossible when you come at it the way I did, when you're so ingrained in it. And I'll be the first to admit that I am a Wix warrior, and I do believe that the people responsible for the girls' death and the disposal of their bodies is within a few miles of me right now.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That is, it's so hard. Jules, thank you. Thank you for coming here and bringing the girls' case. Your heart, determination, passion, they shine through when it comes to this, and they need it. You know, how much you're willing to fight for them each and every day is so beautiful.
Thank you.
It is.
Thank you, my fellow.
We love the opportunity to, we've talked about the Wix case before on the podcast, but we love being able to have you come and tell it, and you know what we want to make sure that you also do before we wrap up is tell our listeners what they can do to help continue to bring attention to this, make those big moves, because like Rachel said, it is not just a hush town anymore. This is nationwide. You know, we have listeners, not just, you know, in the area, but all around. So what can the listeners do to help make those moves to get us closer to finding those answers?
I love that you asked me that because I'll be very, very direct. The Wix family needs financial support because there are going to be astronomical legal fees for what they are pursuing in 2025. Without saying what they're doing exactly, I'll let you connect the dots, but their fight is not over and they're just getting started on their legal rights and their side of it. And we were able to raise a good amount of money during our fight, and that's almost all gone with legal fees.
Right.
So if you girls don't mind linking the GoFundMe in the show
100%.
notes, every dollar counts, and I can attest that every dollar goes back to that family and their legal fees. Also, 10% of the profits that I get from ad revenue from Hushtown always goes back to the family. So we've been able to do a lot of things for them. But every download, every listen that you guys give us on Missing in Hushtown, just know that you're also giving back to the Wix Warriors and our fight for justice.
Yes. Thank you. And so you guys know, Missing in Hushtown, Season 1, anywhere you get your podcasts. Jules, tell our listeners, though, where else they can find you. You mentioned it at the top of the episode, but it's making its comeback. So I want to make sure we also, because you have some other very, very important cases that you cover in your other platforms as well.
I am doing a collaborative podcast, Secrets Beyond the Sacramento River, about the recent suspicious death about Jeff Anderson, working with his family. And you can find me on Instagram at your host Jules, Jules. It's pretty easy to remember. I always introduce myself, hey, I'm your host Jules. So that's the unoriginal name of that. And then also Fire Eyes Media LLC is where Jen and I run and have our network out there that we're building, and work alongside my girls Rachel and Heather as we fight for awareness for Bethany Markowski too.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
could sit behind the mic with you all day, every day. It's amazing. I love it. And you guys, you have to go check her out to know it for yourself. We will talk to you guys next week on another episode of Like Mother, Like Murder. Until then, binge Missing in Hushtown. Follow Jules. Subscribe to True Crime and Headlines. Share You Should Be Here. And be a kind person. Make someone smile. Become a Wix warrior. Do whatever it takes to help find justice for the Wix girls. Okay? We will talk to you next week. Okay, love you. Bye.
Okay, love you. Bye.
I love you. Bye.